Yashodanandana Prajajanarandana Yashodanandana Prajajanarandana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jayadha Madhav Kunjavihari Jayadha Madhava Kunjavihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Prajajanarandana Yashodanandana Prajajanarandana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jayarat Madhava Ravihari Jayarat Madhava Kundavihari Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada Jaya Om Vishnu Pad Paramahamsa Parivajikacharya Shota Shat Shri Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Jai Om Vishnu Pad Paramahamsa Parivajikacharya Shota Shat Shri Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai Granthara Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Or Premanande Hari Hari Bol. Good morning, dear devotees. We are reading from Canto 6, Chapter 10, The Battle Between the Demigods in Vritrasura, Text 11. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So, text 11, Shri Badarayana Vacha, Evam Krita Vyavasito Tadhyan Atarvanastanum, Hare Bhagavati Brahmani Atmanam Sanayanjaho. Shri Badarayana Vacha, Evam Krita Vyavasito Tadhyan Atarvanastanum, Hare Bhagavati Brahmani Atmanam Sanayanjaho. Shri Badarayana Vacha Evam Krita Vivasito Tadyan Atarvanastanam Hare Bhagavati Brahmani Atmanam Sanayanjaho. Would anybody like to repeat?
Shri Badarayan here Uvacha Evam Krita Vasito Tadyan Atarvanas Tanum Hare Bhagavati Brahman Yatmanam Sanayan Jahao.
Thank you, Prabhu. Anyone else? Okay. Shri Badarayana Vacha Shri Shikadev Goswami said, Evam thus, Kritavyavasita, making certain of what to do, in giving his body to the demigods. Tadyan Dadichi Muni, Atarvana, the son of Atarva, Tanum, his body, Hare to the Supreme, Bhagavati, personality of Godhead, Pramani, the Supreme Brahman, Atmanam, himself, the spirit soul, Sanayan, offering, Jaho, gave up. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Prabhupada Ki Jai. Sri Shukadev Goswami said, Dadichi Muni, the son of Atarva, thus resolved to give his body to the service of the demigods. He placed himself, the spirit soul, at the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and in this way gave up his gross material body made of 5 elements. Purport. As indicated by the words Pare Bhagavati Brahman Atmanam Sanayan, Tadichi placed himself as spirit soul at the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In this regard, one may refer to the incident of Dhritarashtra's leaving his body, as described in the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam 1.13.55. Dhritarashtra analytically divided his gross material body into the 5 different elements of which it was made, earth, water, fire, air, and ether, and distributed them to different reservoirs of these elements. In other words, he merged these 5 elements into the original Mahatattva. By identifying his material conception of life, he gradually separated his spirit soul from material connections and placed himself at the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The example given in this connection is that when an earthen pot is broken, the small portion of the sky within the pot is united with the large sky outside the pot. Mayavadi philosophers misunderstand this description of Srimad Bhagavatam. Therefore, Sri Ramanuja Swami, in his book Vedanta Tattvasara, has described that this merging of the soul means that after separating himself from the material body made of 8 elements, earth, water, fire, air, ether, false ego, mind, and intelligence, the individual soul engages himself in devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his eternal form. Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchidananda Vigraha Anadir Adir Govinda Sarvakarana Karanam. The material cause of the material elements absorbs the material body, and the spiritual soul assumes its original position. As described by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Jivera Svarupahoy Krishnara Nityadas, the constitutional position of the living entity is that he is the eternal servant of Krishna. When one overcomes the material body through cultivation of spiritual knowledge and devotional service, one can revive his own position and thus engage in the service of the Lord. Translation again, Sri Shukadev Goswami said, Dadichi Muni, the son of Atarva, thus resolved to give his body to the service of the demigods. He placed himself, the spirit soul, at the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and in this way gave up his gross material body made of 5 elements. Okay. Om Ganatamanandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilita Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama. Hare. So, we're hearing in this purport about Dhritarashtra quitting his material body, which I've been reading, just reading different parts of this pastime of Dhritarashtra and Vidura in the Bhagavatam, which is, very nice to read about all the, just kind of take from different places of the Bhagavatam and combine the pastime so that it's all there in one place. I don't know, maybe it's also fully all in one place in the Mahabharata. I have not read the Mahabharata, so I'm not sure, but it's a very informative, it's an entertaining pastime, it's informative, it's heart-wrenching, it's like all genres wrapped into one, which, usually you can't get in one movie. Either you watch a documentary for information or something, I don't know, soap opera for entertainment and emotion, but we have everything rolled into one, and that's one of the benefits of having Srimad Bhagavatam, is that you get everything, all flavors there. So yeah, this is a very just the purport speaking about how, at ultimately we are Jivira Swarupa Hoy Krishna Nityadas. So the constitutional position of us as spirit souls is that we're eternally the servant of Krishna. And so one has to overcome the material body through cultivation of spiritual knowledge and devotional service, and then one can revive his own position and thus engage in the service of the Lord. So I was also reading the first canto, and I'll find that verse and I'll read it today as well. But it's that famous verse. It's in First Canto, chapter 7. I'll just pull it up now. But that explains like the miseries of the living entity. Is it can be directly mitigated by the linking process of devotional service. I think that's the verse. I might have to search it actually. Hmm. Anyway, it's speaking in the purport. Prabhupada's speaking about how one can't by mechanical hearing and chanting attain Krishna. It's just by the sincerity of the devotee, which I think Hari Chakra was speaking about on Sunday, which is a very nice point. You know, that that's not like, of course, as sadhakas, you know, we're told to do certain things, whether we like it or not, almost as if it's formulaic, but actually by us following the order of the spiritual master for how to be a sadhaka, then that shows our sincerity. So it always comes back to sincerity ultimately, that, you know, we can't just say, well, I've been, you know, chanting for this many years, therefore I should be on this level of bhakti or I deserve this from Krishna. It's actually our sincerity of purpose and heart that impresses Krishna. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 7. Mm.
Text 6.
6, thank you. It saved me a lot of time. Yeah, this one, which are superfluous to him. So, I think if I should keep it for now or later. Well, anyway, I'll read it now. Okay. So, Anarto Pashamam Sakshad Bhakti Yoga Madhokshaje Lokasya Janito Vidvamsh Chakre Satvata Samhitam. The material miseries of the living entity, which are superfluous to him, can be directly mitigated by the linking process of devotional service. But the mass of people do not know this, and therefore the learned Vyasadeva compiled this Vedic literature, which is in relation to the supreme truth. Purport. Srila Vyasadeva saw the all-perfect personality of Godhead. This statement suggests that the complete unit of the personality of Godhead includes his parts and parcels also. He saw, therefore, his different energies, namely the internal energy, the marginal energy, and the external energy. He also saw his different plenary portions and parts of the plenary portions, namely his different incarnations also, and he specifically observed the unwanted miseries of the conditioned souls, who are bewildered by the external energy. And at last he saw the remedial measure for the conditioned souls, namely the process of devotional service. It is a great transcendental science and begins with the process of hearing and chanting the name, fame, glory, etc. of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Revival of the dormant affection. Oh, okay, so this is the part, everybody, if you tuned out already, then perk your ears back up. Revival of the dormant affection or love of Godhead does not depend on the mechanical system of hearing and chanting, but it solely and wholly depends on the causeless mercy of the Lord. When the Lord is fully satisfied with the sincere efforts of the devotee, he may endow him with his loving transcendental service. But even with the prescribed forms of hearing and chanting, there is at once mitigation of the superfluous and unwanted miseries of material existence. Such mitigation of material affection does not wait for development of transcendental knowledge. Rather, knowledge is dependent on devotional service for the ultimate realization of the supreme truth. So it's interesting. I was reading this verse and rereading it and discussing it with devotees and just trying, I'm like, okay, so, you know, a little bit of a debate, like, so if it's saying that, you know, knowledge is dependent on devotional service, then why don't we just do quote unquote practical, as though hearing and chanting is not practical, but that's another topic. But practical devotional service, you know, busying our hands or I guess, minds or typing away on the computer, or I don't even know, out tilling the fields, or just distribute books and don't read, or just cook and don't chant, or something like that. Why not just do those things if it's saying that knowledge and mercy is dependent on, knowledge is dependent on devotional service. So, and uh, the Lord gives his mercy whenever he's fully satisfied with the sincere efforts of the devotee. But there's a couple arguments against that. One is that we're just so forgetful that, yes, you can realize your constitutional position by quote unquote practical devotional service. Um, feeling like that, oh, I'm not this body, all realization like that. But the basis of the material world is ignorance. It's like the first thing Brahma creates is delusion, because you have to be completely insane and delude yourself um, into thinking, oh, this is me now. This flesh suit is me. And whether I'm looking at the screen on the computer in the background is a bear. So whether I'm a bear with, in a meadow with a bunch of, is that a bear? Oh no, that's a moose. With a bunch of hair, and feel like I'm enjoying myself, or in a human body, or in a caterpillar body. This is me. Wow. And this is all I've ever been. So you have to be in complete delusion and ignorance. Um, so this is the basis of this material world. So we have to constantly be reminded, constantly be hearing. Just like, if you have a partner, let's say, then, you have to, it's a constant effort, right, to show affection or remind, well, I guess maybe it's different for how you remind the um, other person, or specific to one gender or the other, but oh, I really care about you. I really love you. You mean the world to me. You're beautiful, whatever. It's like, oh, it's not just like a one and done, that there has to be constant reminders, because I mean, that's just a material example, the living entity is so forgetful, and there's so much insecurity. The basis of the material world is insecurity, and that's ultimately because we forget our spiritual identity. So anyway, we have to be, like we always quote Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya, you have to hear Bhagavatam every day. You have to be reminded every single day. Um, Even if we didn't have, like, let's take just the material body, for example, it's like your body has to be constantly sending you reminders of, like, oh, now you're hungry, now you're thirsty, now you have to go to the bathroom. Like there's your vagal nervous system, or vagus nerve, is like controlling all of these things. So it's reminding you, because if it didn't, you probably forget. You probably forget to drink water if you didn't get thirsty, even if it's something you're supposed to do. So similarly, we have to, I mean, at first, as sadhakas, we just have to get that reminder and impetus from spiritual guides. So whether that's a spiritual master or different shiksha gurus, it's like, hey, remember, gotta chant, gotta read. Like it's important for you. It's important for your spiritual health. But gradually in time, as devotees, you start to develop your uh, bhakti vagus nerve, I guess, that's giving you maybe little pulses of like, hey, your consciousness is a little bit low, or you're feeling unenthusiastic, or just material nature sends you the impetus of like, distress. And then if you've been cultivating proper consciousness and keeping up good habits, and it's like, yes, I should turn to the Bhagavatam and japa, kirtan, devotee association, prasad, like that. So anyway, avidya, yes. So there's so much ignorance going on that we have to be constantly imbuing our consciousness, developing our spiritual intelligence by reading Srila Prabhupada's books. And of course, quality japa is the basis of everything too. It flows into the enthusiasm that then you have in your service. So it's all a big cycle. But these are just, did I go over two arguments or just one? Anyway, those are the arguments for why you can't just, let's say, I don't know, work with your hands or something all day. Of course, Krishna, oh, that is one argument. So, of course, Krishna, nothing is impossible for Krishna. So, let's take, for example, there was the Brahmana who was illiterate, right? So he's trying to read Bhagavad Gita, but it's upside down because the spiritual master told him, you should do this. So, but the whole pastimes are coming to light right in front of him. They're being enacted right in front of him. He can see. And that's because he was following the order of his spiritual master. Now, the order of Srila Prabhupada is because devotees asked Srila Prabhupada about this. I'll get into that in a second, but the order of the spiritual master is to read his books. So, in that way, you're demonstrating your sincerity just by following the order of the spiritual master, which just so happens to be reading. So, yeah, devotees asked, I'm trying to see if I remember this right, but along the lines of, you know, why can't we just chant, basically? If like ultimately all the books, everything is giving the instruction, just chant Hare Krishna, then why read Srimad Bhagavatam? Well, one thing is Prabhupada is responding, because it's an offense to go against the order of the spiritual master, and the spiritual master is ordering you to read his books. So it will also improve your japa just by dint of you um, I mean, technically not even based on the content, but just by dint of you trying to follow that instruction. And secondly, or another reason is that it's also the order of Lord Chaitanya as well, one of the five main processes of devotional service of bhakti. So anyway, um, yeah, this ultimately, knowledge is dependent on devotional service, and our sincerity is shown through the instruction of the spiritual master. But the spiritual master is instructing you should read these books. So that's how we demonstrate our sincerity, and that's how we get the mercy. So going back to today's purport and tied in with what I was just speaking about is that, ultimately we're trying to cultivate this awareness of our true identity. And yeah, in the purport, it's Prabhupada's mentioning this pastime of Dhritarashtra giving up his body, and then also it's speaking about Didichi Muni giving up his body. And it really brings into mind, for one who's contemplating these verses, that, at the end of it all of our false identities will have to be shed. So Krishna is so merciful that if we're trying to practice bhakti, that we come into this world, just into this lifetime, with so much karmic baggage and so many, um, idiosyncrasies and ways of doing things and challenges and quote unquote good karma, things like that. But you can really see Krishna really takes the reins and gives us all the information that we need to know about our nature, about our conditioning, about the impediments in order to be able to come back to Godhead, go back to Him. So I've been reflecting on this because I've gotten my astrology done, and it's helpful to know, okay, well, what are we going to be up against? But I was just really realizing, I'm like, Krishna's really given me like a lot of this stuff I actually already knew, that this about my nature or something like that, just by dint of it's become whatever, either an impediment or something that I've realized that I'm like, oh, I could really engage this in Krishna service. And then it's like, oh, actually, Krishna in the heart was like helping all along. So while it's, this, in my humble opinion, and this is not, I'm not quoting from Prabhupada's books right now, but that it's helpful. Uh, it's just that Krishna doesn't, that's not an essential part of bhakti. So Krishna, won't be like, ha ha ha, it's like it's gonna be so hard for you to come back just because you didn't get your astrology done. So we can use anything in Krishna's service, but anyway, my reflection from this has been like, wow, actually you can really like um overcome a lot of difficulties just from praying and begging Krishna and just being sincere, trying to follow the orders of the spiritual master, and Krishna will give all help. So anyway, yes, so that's about designations. So we do have all these designations and this karmic baggage, but it will all leave us at the end of this life. And oh, yesterday Prabhu was giving class last week and speaking very nicely about how, who even knows anything about their great, 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 great grandparents, right? So, it's just forgotten. After I barely even know anything about my great grandparents. I think my one was like rich because he was an engineer and he made some kind of thing that like some conveyor belt that shook and then it would help like extract gold from a bunch of stones. And now it's like, man, we could create like like a teenager practically in high school could come up with something like that. So then even if you are like memorable or you're written down somewhere, it just becomes so, especially in the world of AI and this and that, like you have like you know, um, Edgar Allan Poe or somebody like writing all this beautiful novels or poetry or this or that. And it's like, well, that was cool and that was great, and I guess we have his name written down, but actually we can just do all of that with AI now. So it just like even if it's written down, it becomes so obsolete so quickly, even in like not even 100 years or maybe 150. So anyway, um coming back to the point that yes, our material designation will be, well, it'll be lost and then also will just and ultimately be forgotten. I was listening to this lecture where Devamrita Maharaj was he was speaking about right before after the passing of Muchakunda and Kalyavana, and then before, is this before Krishna's kidnapping of Rukmini? Um, yeah, it would have been because he was talking about how Balaram, is it Balaram married Revati? Is that true? Because I'm like, he was speaking about, whenever he takes something and then it's like expands the whole lecture, so then I kind of lost the chronology. But anyway, he was in the middle of it, he was explaining how one time Lukudmi, I think is his name, the king's name, went to Brahma, and Brahma was in the middle of watching or listening to a musical performance. And so Kukudmi approached Brahma and he was saying, "Oh, Brahma, I have to ask you something." And Brahma was like, "Okay, I'll get to it, but just wait there so that, I can finish doing this and then I will be happy to attend to you and hear your request." So they waited till the end of the musical performance. It was like an hour, I think, went by Brahma's time. And at the end, he asked Kukudmi, "Okay, what would you like? What's your request? I'd be happy to hear it." And Kukudmi said, "Please, I need a match for my beautiful daughter, who's Revati." And then Brahma said, he just laughed. That was Brahma's response. He just started laughing. And Kukumi's like, what's going on? Why is he laughing? And then Brahma said, well, there's all these people are gone. All the people that you thought were suitable matches for your daughter, all suitors, anybody, they've all gone. There's like so many generations. Actually, 27 Divya Yugas had passed. He's just laughing like, at the temporariness of it all. And Kukudmi's, I think he's in, I mean, I can imagine he's in distress now. It's like, what? And so then uh that was the main point I took from that pastime. But I think then is it that then Vermont recommends Balaram? I could be wrong about that part, but I was focused mainly on the first part that yeah, just the temporariness of it, that Brahma's just like, man, you came up here and then you had to wait during that concert, and in the meantime, all these generations have just been completely annihilated. 27 Divya Yugas. That's 27 cycles of the the four yugas. So yeah, that's just demonstrating the temporariness of this material existence and how we make all of our little problems into huge things, problems that we act like are going to last 27 Divya Yugas, but actually it's just even our problems are very temporary too. So you could take solace in that if you like. So yeah, just going back to this point that, Krishna in the heart, well, that's sorry, kind of skipping around a little bit. So yes, temporariness of material existence. And then, as I was saying before, that Krishna will give us everything we need to know in our heart in order to shed these material designations and be able to identify as a servant of Krishna, as we hear in today's verse, Jiver or purport, Jiver Svabhoy Krishna Nitidas, that we're just the eternal servant of Krishna. Not just, but like, I mean, it is kind of a relief. Like, oh my gosh, I don't have to uphold any more material designations. I'm just the servant of Krishna. It's so nice. Life becomes so simple whenever you just get excited about that. Like, I don't have to worry about my name. I don't have to worry about my fame. I don't have to worry about my recognition. Who knows me? Like any of this stuff. I'm just a servant of Krishna. Ha. That's so, a lot of these things are actually just, well, all of it is baggage, but sometimes we take it as like, it's my dear baggage. It's like, it's all of my junk that I'm carrying on my back that's weighing me down. But because it's my junk, then that means that, it's very near and dear to me, even though it's breaking my back and causing me to suffer. But we're just the servant of Krishna. So the super soul in the heart, like I was saying just whenever I was commenting on astrology and just my little bit of experience um, recently with it, is that, people, or it was common a little while ago, and I've spoken with some devotees about this, but the secret, like it was popular kind of new age thing, or I don't, maybe even after new age, but that you never really find out what is the secret. It's just like, oh, Benjamin Franklin knew the secret, and Einstein knew the secret, and this king knew the secret, and this and that and the other. And so they used it to get what they wanted. But the whole documentary is like, okay, are they going to tell me how to do it? And basically, it boils down to desire, which is interesting because that's also what Krishna consciousness boils down to, that we actually have no control over anything save and except our desire. So Krishna, either Krishna or Krishna via the material energy, is yeah, is controlling everything and dispensing to us our karma. So it's either through Krishna's loving hand or it's through Maya's, she's doing her service well, hand. But yeah. So the only thing that we control is our desire, and I would say then the natural next step of the desire is the prayer to Krishna. Please Krishna, help me come closer to you, or please Krishna, I really want to do this for you. Can you help? Like if you so desire, then this facility would be very useful, or however you want it done, however you want to pray to Krishna, basically. Even if you want to go to Krishna and pray for your material desires, also those are your desires, at least you're approaching Krishna. Um, but yes, this is the only thing we can control, which is a little bit, again, it can be taken as reassuring, where you're like, I just have to desire. It's such a relief. I don't actually have to control anything and leave it up to Krishna as long as I'm, approaching him, and I can feel like the kitten in the mouth of the cat rather than the rat in the mouth of the cat. Or you can get really anxious and freak out and be like, oh my God, I can just desire. I can't control anything. So it depends on your mindset and, of course, well, actually, your intelligence. And the intelligence is strengthened by what? By reading Srila Prabhupada's books, which we come back to, or we were speaking about in the beginning of the class. So So talking about the secret. So the root of the secret, this whole concept, is that yes, it's your desire, and through via your desire, you can get what you want. But this is the material side of things. It's up for debate whether within this life that could actually manifest, that you're trying to manifest by, oh, I really want to, Dame Rita Maharaj says, he's like, I want to be the Queen of England. I want to be the Queen of England. And then it's like, no, you're probably not going to become the Queen of England just because you're desiring it. But in Krishna consciousness, super soul in the heart is the real quote unquote secret. So in Krishna consciousness, we can desire, Krishna, I really want this for you. I really want this for you. I really want to do this for you. I really want to come back to you. Um, I'm struggling with this. Please help me. Whatever it is, that then super soul in the heart does kick in. And then it's, Krishna's personal hand is then involved. And that's the real secret, is that based on our desire and the intensity of our desire, actually, amazing things can happen. And I think I've, told some, I guess, examples from my own life about this in the past, and I've seen it. It's very evident for me via book distribution. I mean, I've seen it in other areas of my life whenever it's been more like I'm facing some impediments or challenges. But in regards to book distribution, for sure, like there's been so many times, that you're just praying and praying. Of course, it's not mechanical either. You can't just be like, I'm going to pray, Krishna, today on this January 22nd or whatever, let me do a Bhagavatam set. And it's like, it could happen if I really, really prayed about it very intensely. But from what I've noticed, it's usually like a cumulative thing. And even with overcoming challenges or other things, usually it's like, for me at least, that you're praying and praying and praying, and it's like a cumulative effect, and then something shifts, something changes, your perception changes, something internally. I've had that happen so many times. It's really beautiful. And then with Radha Damodar, sometimes I just like, you pray about something, and then within 20 minutes, like, I think I was giving this example that when Devaramrita Maharaj was here, I was like really not really disturbed about something, but it was just like an internal conflict of like, is this the right thing to do, or is that the right thing to do? Or, my conception of what I thought was right was being challenged. So then I'm praying to Radha Damodar, I'm like, please, I just need some sign, something. And then within not even 20 minutes, then a devotee walked in, and, usually they're like, hey, how are you? This and that, we'll talk. But they didn't, they were like, Dina, I need to tell you something. And then they just like fully just said the answer, just like snippet answer of exactly what my question was to Krishna. And it was so specific that I was just like, That's crazy." So yeah, it's really just like our desire is so powerful. Like I said, it's the only thing we can control. And that's not just me saying that. I was listening to it in a lecture as well. So yes, remember this, if you can take anything away from this class, that the super soul in the heart is the real secret. So if you want to get what you want, and not specifically materially, but if you want to get what you want ultimately, which is love of Godhead and to be reinstated in our constitutional position, then, meditate on what is your desire to be, how do you want to come closer to Krishna? Or maybe you have some material desire and you're like, Krishna, please, I would really like this to be fulfilled. So even approaching Krishna with the material desires is, I guess, not ideal, but it's good. Then yeah, this is ultimately what we can control, and this is how to get what we ultimately want in life, is to desire and then pray to Krishna for it. So yeah, I think we'll end on this one last, well, just with this pastime that I've been reading with Uddhava and Vidura in the third canto, chapter 1. as I was saying, about, just getting into the whole like emotions and mood and everything of this pastime with Vidura and Dhritarashtra, that, Vidura goes to Dhritarashtra's house and then, or is in the home already. We were trying to figure this out because the pastimes in parts, like I said, it's kind of spread out over the Bhagavatam, first canto, third canto, maybe somewhere else. That yeah, so Vidura's trying to give Dhritarashtra advice, and then Duryodhana, oh man, he really insults Vidura. He's like, "You kept son of a mistress," like, you know. And then there's some insults thrown at Vidura, and then Vidura's like, "I'm out of here," and then he goes on pilgrimage. Um, and then ultimately he comes back after the Battle of Kurukshetra, if I'm correct, and then tells Dhritarashtra, like, what are you doing? You were living like a dog in the house of your relatives, the very ones that you tried to kill. And then Dhritarashtra goes to the forest and his wife follows, correct? So yeah, if any, actually, I feel like I say this every class, but if I ever tell the pastime and it's not really accurate or there's more details, it's helpful for me if somebody at the end, or I guess during, at the end is like, this is actually how it goes, or this is the name of the person, because usually I can remember the philosophical concepts in the purport, but for some reason, like the chronology and names and stuff of the pastimes really uh, evade me. So, anyway, so this pastime, then we get to, in the third canto, chapter 1, then we get to Uddhava and Vidura speaking. So Vidura is on his pilgrimage, and then he comes across Uddhava, and then he's asking Uddhava, and and Prabhupada says at the end of one of his purports that the questions Vidura was asking Uddhava were not exactly practical, but rather they were psychological. So basically, it says that Vidura knew, okay, the war has happened. And then he's asking Uddhava, like, out of disbelief, whenever somebody's like, I was trying to explain this to the devotee, they're like, I still don't get that. I'm like, when somebody tells you something, you're like, she did what? And then you're like, they'll keep talking, you're like, she did what? So there's like disbelief, it's like you're hearing the information, so but you're internally you're like rejecting it, or emotionally rejecting it. So the same thing is happening with Vidura and Uddhava, that Vidura, it's like he knows to some, I mean, maybe fully, but from my understanding, to some degree, the answers to these questions, but uh psychologically he's having a hard time accepting the import. So Canto 3, Chapter 1. Mm. So yeah, so these are basically the questions that Vidura is asking Uddhava. He's saying, "O sober one, others such as Hridika, Charudeshna, Gada, and the son of Satyabhama, who accept Lord Sri Krishna as the soul of the self and thus follow his path without deviation, are they well?" And then he goes on to, uh, he says, "Let me inquire whether Maharaj Yudhishthira is now maintaining the kingdom according to religious principles." Formerly, Duryodhana was burning with envy because Yudhishthira was being protected by the arms of Krishna and Arjuna as if they were his own arms. So he's asking about he's asking about Bhima, and he's saying, like, these are the glories of Bhima. Let me ask about him, and let me ask about Arjuna, and these are his glories. So he's going, Samba, like everybody, he's going through and asking about how they're doing. And it's a really heart-wrenching pastime. Like, just the whole thing from beginning to end is like filled with so much emotion, and you can really get into it, that I'm like, wow, it's Bhagavatam just has a way, I mean, the whole of Krishna consciousness really just has a way of hitting the core of the heart. And I suppose how most people practice religion nowadays is that the best you can get is sentiment, which just hits like the periphery of the heart, it's like you're trying to shoot and then it just grazes it, or it just like misses the heart. But Bhagavatam pierces right to the core of the heart, where you're like, oh my gosh, this is so, it just softens it. It does something in there. It's like, I don't know what it does. it softens it or it melts it or it blends it up, but it just makes it more soft and gooey on the inside, just like a, I don't know, like a caramel, chocolate covered caramel. That's what the heart or carob covered caramel, depending on how you feel about that. Um, yeah, so basically we need something that's heart hitting. We can't just settle for, conventional peripheral religion. We have to actually have something that's heart hitting. Otherwise, we can't give up sinful life. So basically, uh, this is how we can see, and this is something that really bothered me a lot. I couldn't really articulate it so much at the time, but whenever I was raised semi-religious, um, that, okay, well, we'd hear something that did hear some sermon that some pastors had a good, though I think the first pastor that we had, he was really nice. I liked him. And he spoke very, like, really got into the um, stories. I don't know if you could call them pastimes. Anyway, stories of the Bible. Uh, and then later on, though, it just, and as I got older, and then especially as I started practicing bhakti, I'm like, this feels really sentimental, where we're just like, we're speaking about joy, joy, joy. We should have joy. We should give joy. But I'm just like, but how? Why? What? Who? Like, we need to go deeper, actually. And then also something that did bother me whenever I was younger is that, we do all this like going to some kind of worship service or this or that. And then because most people, especially my generation, has a very keen eye for hypocrisy nowadays, probably because we're like the biggest hypocrites, but you could just see, you're like, what? But okay, we just went and heard all about this. And then after it's like, we're going to get a drink and like, going to watch the football game or this or that. It's like, whew, got church out of the way. And now we can like go get donuts and, have a midday drink and watch sports. And I mean, then also, I wasn't thinking at the time, but then, engage in people engaging in illicit activity, all kinds of stuff like that. So, yeah. And also I had a youth pastor, I think too, where I was going to for a while. And then it found out that he was, what's that called whenever you're diverting the funds into your own account? I forget what's the word for that, just escaped me. Anyway, so it's just
Embezzlement.
embezzlement, that's it. And so it was just like, of course, not that, I mean, this stuff also goes on sometimes, even within, Krishna consciousness, because we are coming from the full, like, material atmosphere. But the point is that, at least we're hearing about constantly the ideal of like the ideal standards, um, what we're striving for. Like Prabhupada said, devotees aren't perfect, but at least they're trying to be. And at least, you could say that about people that are also taking religion very seriously. But my point is that, we want something that actually changes the heart, not that we're just externally practicing something, mechanically practicing something, or, because we should, and then the heart isn't changing simultaneously. Of course, like I said in the beginning, as sadhakas, it's like we're doing things because we should. But if we're sincerely trying to follow, then the heart will also be getting cleansed at the same time. So anyway, yes, we need something that hits the core of the heart, or at least starts to change the heart, not just something superficial. So we need to read Bhagavatam. We need to get into the emotions of it. We need to have, um, you know, emotional exchanges with devotees, revealing the mind, having their mind revealed to us, all the loving exchanges. And also it's very important, and I'm realizing this a lot, to have services that we feel challenged by. Because having a service that you feel challenged by in terms of not just like challenge in the terms of like it's constantly distressful, but challenge in terms of like you can get some spiritual anxiety where you want to improve it. You're always looking for ways to like, could we be more clean on the altar? Could we be more on time? Could we expand the creamery? Could we like just, and a lot of times it is according to devotees' nature, or like even if they're not conscious of it, it's like you just kind of, you know, like a river. You just kind of flow into your groove of what inspires you, or gaining more knowledge, like, oh, I wish I could learn more verses, or I wish I could learn the pastimes and, the chronology and exactly what's happening so I can be able to retell it. Like, just needing to have that sense of challenge and excitement, because it comes with so many emotions, actually. We might not even be conscious of it, but, it comes with yearning, longing. Otherwise, we're going to be yearning and longing for material pleasure. And I was hearing David Maharaj say this in a lecture, that if you don't have a service that if you don't have service that's like challenging and exciting and engaging and dynamic, then you're gonna look for that in the material world. And he said not specifically the material world. He said you're gonna look for that in the interaction between man and woman, like just directly. He's like, boom. We're not even gonna like have a middle step. It was just like it's gonna go from this to this. That's where you're gonna seek all the absorption and dynamism, dynamics, however you say that word. Um, you're going to look for that in the relation between man and woman. I was like, wow, he just said it so outright. And then he said, this was crazy. He was like, that's why Prabhupada said that he attributed the rise of illicit sex in the world to impersonalism, or impersonalists specifically, like just propagating this notion that, oh, material life is actually without variety, and we're not serving the supreme variety himself, but just like spiritual life has to be dry. It has to be just based on theoretical knowledge. And it's just boring ultimately, because then you're going to seek the how do you say that word? Dynamism, something like that in the material world. Sorry, you didn't say material world, in the relation between man and woman, and then Prabhupada was saying in illicit sex. So anyway, I just thought that was like mind blowing for me. I'm like, wow, what a genius! Like this connection is like, it's so subtle, but it's like it was really good. So anyway, I'm gonna end there. Covered a lot of ground. So if anybody has any reflections or comments or questions or corrections, be happy to hear them.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Very nice class, and you covered an awful lot of territory. All over the place. Uh, um, Not a lot of time for comments here, but I have a bunch of thoughts, and I'm going to try to organize them and express them. Um, Devotional service. Spoke about, made a distinction between practical services and other sorts of services. And of course, all devotional services is practical from one perspective, but whether it's hearing and chanting, or working with your hands in some sort of way, there actually is, devotional services is absolute. Makes no difference how you're rendering devotional service. You can render service with your mind. You can render service with your hand, with your ears, with your tongue. All kinds of ways to render service, and they are all equal. But particularly powerful in this age, of course, is hearing and chanting. There is a Srila Prabhupada used to tell us that you don't have to do anything particularly wonderful in devotional service. You don't have to do some big thing. You just whatever you can do easily, do that, but do it steadily, do it consistently, and to render any particular service steadily, automatically it will become challenging, because life throws all kinds of stuff at you, and sometimes it's difficult to be steady in even the simplest service. But it can be very simple, and that's sufficient to deliver you back home. Srila Prabhupada gave a wonderful example of the time when he was living at the Radha Damodar temple in Vrindavan. There was a woman who adopted the service of supplying Jamuna water to the pujaris every morning before Mangala Arti. And she did this every day for years without fail. She would rise early and walk down to the Jamuna and collect a pot of water and carry it back on her head, and deliver that to the pujaris for their morning puja. Um, but she did it every day, no matter what, regardless of the weather and driving rainstorms and regardless of the circumstances. She never failed to perform this service. And Srila Prabhupada said, simply for that one simple service of delivering water every day, she went back home.
Wow.
Um, regard Steadiness is, I could go on for some time about steadiness, but steadiness is a hugely important step in devotional service, and it's necessary in order to advance to higher stages, uh, more intimate service. Um, you have to come to the point at which you can be relied upon by Krishna's servants and ultimately Krishna himself. Krishna's servants will not allow just anyone to approach Krishna. You have to be reliable in your service. So steadiness is something to aspire for. Um, you spoke about sincerity. Um, um, you may find it interesting to hear something about how Srila Prabhupada judged the sincerity of his disciples. And he explained it in this way, that he judged his disciples' sincerity by whether or not they showed up for Mangala Artik. You show up for Mangala Artik every day consistently, you are sincere. Oh dear, we're out of time. I had lots more about astrology.
Thank you. It was really nice to hear. I'd like to hear more, but the deities are here.